run through some things with you today. Over my shoulder, you can see Rachel. We also have a new member of staff, Trudy, who's just joined us. And I hope you've got pen and paper ready, because I've got loads to whiz through today. And any of these topics we go through today, I could probably spend an hour just on one or two of them. This is probably one of the fewer times I've done this through Zoom and sharing files, etc. So Lewis is on standby to let me know if something's not coming through. All right, so if everything's working well, you should be getting a PowerPoint presentation come through. And we at Innate Family Chiropractic Centre pride ourselves on working with our community really in not only delivering the musculoskeletal aspect of chiropractic care, but looking at the functional health care and the vitalistic approach to health. So when we've worked through the years with Clapham Collinge, we decided that pretty much at the moment it would be very relevant to look at our immune systems and how we are preparing for life coming into winter. And with the announcements of different lockdowns and different guidance changing all the time with the government, I think this is even more relevant, especially considering everything which was in the news last night. So as an overview, what I'd like to really go through with you is kind of like a holistic approach of how we can prepare for ourselves for winter, bearing in mind that we're not only in high COVID alert mode, but bearing in mind also we've got flu season around the corner and the classic cough colds all around us. So we need to also look at what is health, what is wellness, and then look at eating well, moving well, and thinking well in a functional healthcare system. So just get some nitty-gritty out of the way. Nothing that we go through today is really aimed at any individual or designed really to treat or cure any condition or disease. Obviously, it's important to take up any personal healthcare issues with an appropriate trained professional. Our goal today is really to spark an interest. I'm going to whiz through a couple of topics, as I said, which we could spend a lot of time on. And the goal really is, as within our practice, is to install or plant the seed of interest and debate, and really to empower you and within your family and your immediate community to ask different questions and start making informed decisions towards your own health goals. I was strolling through, when I was thinking about this talk, I was strolling through the internet, and as an advert popped up with Halfords, and the headline was along the lines of, what are you doing to get your car ready for winter? Which made me think, what are we doing individually for getting ourselves ready for winter? We have campaigns which we run in our centre through the year, and one of them in this year is all about preparing for winter. So we get a checklist about what's essential to put in our cars with perhaps poor weather coming, perhaps get a service, get everything ready for winter. But I started thinking, well, what are we doing as a community getting ourselves ready for winter, particularly with or without COVID? Because wherever we turn, everything is about COVID-19, but we're forgetting about other things and other relevant health conditions and issues which come with winter. So I was walking through one of our local stores, and I came across this presentation. And it made me even think further of, well, what is out there that's actually supporting us to get ready for winter? And as you can see, a lot of products on this stand is all about considering the fact that you've probably already got a cough, cold, flu. So it's not really preparing us for winter. It's saying you're going to get sick. So this is what we've got ready for you. The irony of it is, if you look and see what the medicated response is of what it's wedged between. So my thoughts of, and my weird sense of humor of thinking, well, this is how people think we need to prepare for winter. Then we also need probably a whole bunch of chocolates as well as a whole lot of beer. So that's kind of ironically how many people do prepare for winter. And so it kind of made me think along the lines of, well, most people don't really understand that within modern healthcare, there's really two different types of systems that we can use. One which is more sickness care, where we're looking to relief of symptoms, And that's what that last slide is all about. You've already got a cough, cold, flu kind of symptoms. So these are the things, and a lot of these packages actually even say effective in relieving the symptoms of cough, cold. They're not really treating the condition. Then also we've got healthcare, which is about what do we do, what strategies can we put in place for us to be at our optimum, for the optimum expression of health. And this is kind of along that preparation element. So I said, well, we've got the idea with getting our cars ready for winter, but what are we doing for us to be well and to be at our best coming into winter? So within chiropractic and our nervous system approach, we've always been positioned to being not really about treating a condition or disease, but about optimal expression of health. We restore normal spinal function, we restore normal nervous system function, so the body has the best chance to function and adapt to our environment. Within my studies that I'm doing, initial studies of functional medicine, the functional medicine role fits perfectly into that with chiropractic. It's a holistic, personalized approach. It's a functional approach, and looking at evidence and the science around us that we know, but applying it to really finding the cause, not just, managing a symptom. So our goal there is to restore function and thereby restoring health. So we're going to go through a couple of analogies to show you what I mean. If you were to wake up in the morning and you come down to the driveway and to your parked car and you notice that you've got a flat tire, you immediately know to get to work, you need to get air in the tire. And so the immediate situation, you could replace the tire, but perhaps get a pump and pump up the tire. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's going to get you to work. Now, you tend to find that happens each morning. Now, the question here is what versus why. If we ask the question what, the problem is the flat tire. So what can I do about it? The answer with the what question is, what do you need? What do we need to solve or relieve the symptom being the flat tire? So we have a pump. So every morning you go and buy a fancy pump, and every morning that pump pumps up your tire. And if you spend a lot of money, you can even get one which is automated to do it for you. And every morning your tire is pumped up and you can get to work and get home. The why question is why is that happening? Why is my tire flat? Why would it not be a good idea in the long term to use a pump just to put air in? I'm not solving the problem. And we know that with a tire down the line, that tire is going to get weakened. It might have a faulty valve, it might have a slow puncture. If we don't answer the question why, that system is going to get weaker. But when we look at health and sickness care, we're doing that all the time. We're always treating the what. We even go to health practitioners and say, what's going on, rather than why is this going on? So if we take that one step further, we look at the concept of homeostasis and inflammation, because really a lot of chronic health around us is about inflammation. Homeostasis is the situation where we try and get a constant function in a variable environment. So what I mean by that is we're trying to get something to stay fairly constant, like our blood pressure, like our body temperature, in situations which is always variable. If we use this in modern day, that's a bit like trying to keep the temperature in your bath at a constant temperature, as well as a constant level, with the hot and cold tap on and the plug out. So we're continually functioning in an everyday environment, which is causing fluctuations, and our body is so amazing, it's continually tweaking that. Now, if that situation gets unsettled and gets out of balance, and we get a situation which tips to one side, we get a loss of homeostasis, a loss of balance. And if you look at a lot of health conditions, it's all about inflammation. And it's even more relevant with COVID at the moment, or flu and cough and colds, where the imbalance shifts us to cause the immune system to react. Inflammation is a bit like if you get that temperature in the bath wrong and you have too much hot, and that the heat will cause the skin to either burn or get inflamed and red. It's an unpleasant situation, but your body is telling you, I'm out of balance. Could you do something wrong about it? And that goes back to the why or what. Are you going to respond by acting in what, or are you going to respond by why? So when we look at immunity, which is what this talk's all about, we realize that from a functional perspective, immunity is not one thing. It's actually a combination of, like the hot and cold tap and the plug. It's about the immunity coming from an interaction of all multiple systems in the body. It's about hormones, neurotransmitters, cells, and all these systems working all the time. It's always working. It's never not working. And generally speaking, they all come together to detect and respond and protect the body. But this is dependent on our internal environments within the body as well as our external environment in which we live. So there's types of immunity. I won't go into too many details, but there's an inborn immunity, like our blood cells, picks up a virus and it reacts. We have an adaptive immunity where we get exposed to diseases or things in our environment, a bit like chicken pox. And then we have a passive immunity, like with breastfed milk, parting on a temporary immunity to a child. So if we look at immunity really in a simple way, as a seesaw, we only have two factors with immunity. We have a germ or a toxin or so comes into our environment, and we have us, the host. And in the optimum, we want these to at least balance. You need to, so taking something like a cough cold, for example, you need exposure. So you need to be exposed to the virus or the germ, and you need the body to interact with it to keep this balance. You actually need both to exist. If the germ, or the virus in this case, gets the upper hand, it tips in its favor. It starts taking over and it replicates, and it is now a threat. The body naturally, this is what we term as a sickness. The body naturally has to respond to that by creating an immune response to try and tip things in our favor. And this is when we would go through the symptoms of sickness. Now, if we look at the what, we can understand what's going on. We're running a fever, we've got temperature. If we look at the why, we're going to say, why has this happened? See, ultimately, what we want is the host to be able to have the upper hand. This is when we're well, and this is when we're on top of the germ. And in reality, what happens is we really are continually tipping one way or the other. And that's actually optimum function. Sometimes we will find that the host needs to have a response to get the upper hand again. So in a multi-system view, we talk about in chiropractic, the nervous system, the flight or fright or the rest or recharge. The body needs to fight for its life to engage the immune system to fight off an invader. And at times it then needs to rest and recharge to regain its strength. So in our functional lifestyle approach, we talk along the lines of we need to move well, think well, the physical, emotional, and chemical. And what I'd like to do today is take this into some of the strategies and some of the approaches that we can put in place from a functional immune system perspective. So when we look at the physical, we have on one side of the scale, we have a high impact, HIIT kind of exercises where we are putting the body under a lot of demand. And there's a lot of research which says this is a fantastic way of exercising. And then on the other hand, we have the yoga, Pilates, the walk through the woods. These are the rest and recharge, relaxing aspects of exercise. The key with this, with your immune system, is not which one is better than the other. They both have their place. It's really about, for me, is matching your activity to your needs. If you're highly stressed, your body's under a huge amount of strain, it's tipping towards the body is trying to fight an invader or toxin, or we overloaded. It doesn't make a huge amount of sense to use a huge amount of high intensity interval training. That's just going to drive your body more into that state of fatigue and ultimately create inflammation. And as we said, inflammation stimulates and stresses the immune system. Sometimes, though, we need to get the cardiovascular system engaged. So that would be appropriate. So we've got to look at your stress load. What is your stress load? And that will determine what appropriate exercise we would encourage you to do. Because exercise actually has a multi-system benefit. It benefits us on a physical, as well as an emotional, as well as a chemical perspective. When we look at mental health, and what is one of the good things with COVID and lockdown coming out is people have become a lot more aware of their own personal mental health. Lockdown and isolation has really woken people up to their own personal mental health needs. So as the saying goes, the head leads the body. Our perception is really our reality. So our questions would always be, where's your focus? How well are you handling stress? And what are your most effective coping mechanisms? And this comes down to really is your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is your purpose? So things that can support us and therefore support our immune system are things like mindfulness, meditation, and a lot of people don't really realize or put a lot of focus on their food choices. So when we look at meditation, we've found that it has a huge benefit on our immune system. And again, this is because it shifts us towards that rest and recharge element of dealing with inflammation. We know that it increases stem cells. It has a huge benefit on increasing brain connections. And the important factor relating today with immune system is that it regulates and reduces inflammation in the body. So mindfulness and meditation, and there's no point in certainly in my lifetime that I think in our present climate that has a bigger role to play. And foods. When the body is in a state of inflammation and it's overload and it's stressed and cortisol goes up, your chocolate bar, your quick fix food, your alcohol, these all become very attractive because that's what drives inflammation and that's what drives the body craving certain quick fix energy foods. But we know that foods can change and alter our physiology and change the way the immune system works. And we'll come to that a little bit more when we talk about the gut health. So we're looking at things like zinc, magnesium, your vitamin B, your omega-3s, and your probiotic foods. These have a huge benefit in zinc and magnesium. B vitamins and C vitamins are the main vitamins and minerals which will get depleted very quickly in high stress situations. Your omega-3 has a very anti-inflammatory effect. Your probiotics significantly boost and support your gut health, which, as you'll see, has a huge influence on serotonin levels and your immune system. So don't underestimate the food choices that you can make in relating to the mind-body connection. So when we look at mental health and your purpose, my questions to you would be, what kind of exercises are you choosing? And from a mental health perspective, do you participate in guilt-free exercise and rest? We live in a lifetime these days where, a power nap in the afternoon or taking an hour to themselves to go for a walk through the woods is seen as a guilty pleasure, where it really should be seen as a necessity. We need time to restore. There's always a place for creative activities. We pride ourselves very often in our physical attributes, but, what about our painting skills? What about our crafts? A lot of people say they can't paint, they can't sing. If they really mean is they don't think they can do it well. But the key with that is, from a mental health perspective, is not whether you do it well, it's what benefit do you get from it. The other big thing from a mental health perspective is sleep. This is a huge problem in our modern day life. And are we making choices which are moving us again towards a stress overload, or are we making choices which are helping us to go into a rest and recharge? Sometimes we need to kick up the backside and get going, and sometimes we need to take some time out. So when we look at lack of sleep, which is a huge issue in our modern day life, we know that lack of sleep results into poor glucose and insulin control. Insulin resistance is one of the most significant causes of chronic inflammation in the body. And we could do a whole an hour or two just on insulin resistance. It's basically the overloading of the body's ability to maintain blood sugar levels. It's a precursor for a lot of chronic conditions, not just diabetes. Your lack of sleep has a huge impact on your cardiovascular system, huge influence on your mood. You only have to ask anyone who's had young kids or worked a couple of hours late for meetings or deadlines of how they function the next day. We know that lack of sleep has a huge impact on the immune system because of cortisol and adrenaline control, and therefore knocks onto hormone balances, and it lowers life expectancy. There's huge impact on association also with lack of sleep and the effects on the brain, and potentially the knock-on effect for further down the line of dementia and other cognitive conditions. So sleep is a huge aspect and a big problem A lot of research these days suggests that a lot of people are probably getting around between 4 and 6 hours sleep and nowhere near the 8 to 10 hours of sleep. Difference between getting enough sleep to survive and enough sleep to thrive. So with sleeping, our natural sleeping rhythm is about this dance between cortisol and melatonin at the top of your screen. When we wake, our cortisol levels are the highest. This is what gets us up and gets us going. I can't sleep in, I've got too much to do. Cortisol drives us, it gets us going. The normal cycle is that cortisol should wane through the day. And as it drops towards early evening and as the night comes in and the daylight drops, the melatonin increases. And as the melatonin increases, so do we drop into that parasympathetic soft rest and recharge, which should nurture us towards sleep. So when we have poor blood sugar levels, poor sleep cycles, overload and stress, artificial lights, this changes. And this is one of the big factors which occurs with chronic stress, that it messes up this hormonal pattern and this balance. So when we look at sleep and the sleep cycles, we have about around 90 to 120 minute sleep cycles. So when you go to sleep at night, your initial kind of 3 or 4 cycles are your deepest sleep. That's where you get enough sleep to rest and recharge enough to survive. So we can brag and survive on 3 or 4 hours of sleep, but to sustain it, we're missing out on the rest and recharge, deep sleep through the whole sleep cycle, through a whole 7-8 hours. So we get enough to survive, but not enough to thrive, and that takes its toll through time. So the 3 most common culprits of threatening our sleep cycles is the unregulated blood sugar levels. So we've got to look at our diet, which we'll come to. Again, the poor nutritional status, and then the big one is chronic stress. The reason being is chronic stress influences cortisol, and cortisol levels play havoc with that balance between cortisol and melatonin. So you've got to look at your sleep and look at your sleep cycle and saying, is this moving me towards the left of fight or flight, or is this making me, or am I getting too much rest and recharge? Do I need to get going and get things in place to get that balance? So we need to be productive, and we need times to rest. So the 2 big things that we find when you talk about sleep is people will say they have difficulty getting to sleep, and we'll have people saying they have difficulty staying asleep. Getting to sleep is generally a sleep preparation issue. How we prepare for sleep, the 2 or 3 hours leading up to going to sleep. So we're shifting towards that melatonin rise and getting cortisol levels. So that late night snack of sugary food is going to bolster the cortisol. Then some people will say they can get to sleep, but 2-3 o'clock in the morning they're waking up. Sometimes we've got to look at a hormonal issue there. There's some or medication, but a lot of times it's because of chronic stress. What's going on in the day usually presents itself at 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning, because those cortisol levels are starting to rise, and you actually get in lighter sleep. So you're not in your deep subconscious sleep. You're more in your lighter sleep. So that front of the brain, the thinking part of your brain kicks in, and now you're starting thinking about that email, that telephone call, your bank account, etc. So we're going to start looking at sleep, of how we are working with sleep. So some but not all of the strategies around is looking at balancing your diet, particularly looking if you have a high sugar reliance in your diet. More fiber, because it's a prebiotic. It promotes and supports your gut bacteria, which has a huge role in your sleep pattern. Limiting or removing alcohol, we know that throws off your hormonal pattern. The afternoon caffeine is a big one. The half-life of caffeine is about 5 hours. So it means that for a dose of caffeine, it takes about 5 hours for your body to break down that caffeine. So we know that afternoon and certainly evening caffeine can play a role with your quality of sleep. Managing stress, exercise comes with that, and then simple things like we've heard before, your room temperature, and there's a lot more awareness now of not bringing technology into the bedroom. The key for me is also sleep preparation. There's a lot of people who just they wind themselves up, then they're tired, and then they go to bed. Sleep preparation should start, I think, probably a couple of hours at least before you actually feeling you're going to sleep. That might be a relaxing bath. It might be switching off technology, turning down off the computer. Certainly blue light we're a lot more aware of. but it's just that stimulation, that tendency just to quickly look at social media or catch up on the news. With the news at the moment, the worst thing is look at the news just before you're going to sleep, because that's what you're preloading into your memory for when you're trying to sleep. So look at sleep preparation specifically. If you're finding it difficult to get to sleep, you're probably starting your sleep preparation too late, and you're not drifting into that rest and recharge state. So we work closely with Cytoplan. They're not the only products around, but we find adrenal support and Cyto and Night are good supplements because they are food-based supplements, really looking to try and support either chronic stress with the adrenal support or the Cytonite. Cytonite has that cherry and magnesium and hops combination, which is really good at encouraging the body to drop into that melatonin. The cherry supplement is a precursor for the body to use that supplement to make more melatonin. And we know that L-theanine is a really good supplement as far as settling and dropping down. It's all designed to move us away from that cortisol overload and into the more the melatonin production. So last one of those three, the physical, emotional, and chemical, the chemical stresses. We always talk a lot about diet, but we do need to remind ourselves that a lot of it is also about the environment around us. That we work, we sleep, we play, we wash ourselves in, all the products we put on our skin, these can all have a huge impact on our physiology and therefore on our immune system. But the diet is really the biggest one which affects our physiology, because it's something regularly and it's something that we have choices on. When we look at the immune system, probably about 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, there was hardly any research out on the gut bacteria, the microbiome. Now there's thousands of research projects coming out every year. We know that the gut bacteria moves around in different parts in the gut in a cycle. So the question is, whether is the sleep cycle us responding to the gut or the gut actually responding to us? And there's a lot of evidence to actually suggest that it's the bacteria that are actually influencing us with our daily rhythm. We know that immune system with the gut bacteria, most of the immune system is produced in the gut. And we know from a hormonal perspective that most of the serotonin we have is actually situated in the gut. And it's the gut connection through the enteric nervous system to the brain that's influencing our mood. So going back to our food choices, we've got to look at the gut mood food connection. There's a huge connection of how the food choices and what we are putting into our guts is affecting our physiology. And so the question always is, our gut actually moving us again into inflammation or away from inflammation? The biggest cause or disruption into the gut and inflammation is sugars, and particularly our control of glucose. We've got to remember that every carbohydrate that we eat, whether it's a chocolate bar or whether it's a sprig of broccoli, the carbohydrates in those foods get turned to sugar. The quicker that it turns to sugar, the more stress it puts on our system, and results in, again, this insulin resistance and this inflammation cycle. So our food choices have a huge impact on our immune system. We were all brought up with this food pyramid. This is the idea of what our food pyramid used to, or should be, but it's changing. This is kind of old school, that most of our food should be coming from your carbohydrates at the bottom of the table. And this was really brought about because the analogy of fat makes you fat, or fat brings cardiovascular disease. And if you look at it, when this was brought in and the development of chronic illnesses and what they are, we're fully aware now in functional healthcare that this pyramid is outdated and is incorrect. The total reliance of carbohydrates as your main food source is resulting in a huge amount of chronic health conditions. Diabetes only really the tip of the iceberg of them. Some people favor the paleo food pyramid. I'm not trying to say that this is the way to go, but it's just to say that this is where functional healthcare is looking at different things. We have a higher emphasis on vegetables and lower emphasis on fruit. Fruits usually carry a high amount of sugar, particularly fructose. Fructose puts a huge amount of stress into the insulin resistance. So we're less favorable of fruit, and if we have fruit, ideally it's in season. And so it's really vegetables, your proteins, and then your good healthy oils, your fats, your nuts and seeds. So you'll see there's very little focus in the paleo diet, which is really your hunter-gatherer diet, on grains, because in the hunter-gatherer time they didn't really exist. It's not my purpose to kind of put forward one diet versus the other, but what I would say, whichever we choose, whether it's vegetarianism, veganism, paleo, traditional diet, what we should be looking really is I like the focus on a nutrivore diet. A nutrivore diet really emphasizes high quality, nutrient dense food. You can be a very healthy vegetarian, but you also can be a very unhealthy vegetarian, because vegetarians can also eat chips and cheese. So to me, it's not really what the diet is. That's your personal choice, but we really need to be looking at high quality, nutrient dense foods. That's going to move us more towards the quality of nutrients delivered. The argument is that we need carbohydrates, and we do. So I'm not against blacking out. I'm not for blacking out all carbohydrates. But one thing to highlight is that any plant food that you eat has carbohydrates in it. It's supplied in a natural form, and your body has to break it down harder to get hold of. So the sugar content of an apple is very different to the same sugar content in another food, because it has a cellulose lattice in it. Your body has to break that down, and a lot of the sugars aren't made available. So your sugar hit from an apple that you chew and eat is very different to apple juice, which is very different to your chocolate bar, even if they have the same calories and the same sugar content. So where do you start? I think where we should all start is just go back to what we know. What we know is what are we designed to eat? What are we designed to eat to thrive versus what can we know that we can eat and we still survive it? 80-20 rule, perhaps 80% of the time we should be eating what we designed, and I think there's still plenty of space there for our modern day sweets, treats, and interest in food. We acknowledge food isn't just fuel, but we do need to look at what we are designed to eat and what it is that makes us thrive, particularly if we're looking at it from an immune system perspective, and with all the viruses, etc., that we are being exposed to in this coming winter. So go back to whole foods. I follow the medicinal chef Dale Pinnock on Facebook. I love his posts. They are full of fantastic recipes from a chef's perspective, but also from a healthcare perspective. And very often his posts, he'll also even highlight why some of these foods this dish would be good, like the one on the left. He'll highlight what vitamins, minerals, fiber. So you actually get that sense of, well, this tastes really nice. It looks is great. He's not a pro one type of food. He is, again, like I'm saying, that whole food supporter. In our center, we love our smoothies, so we always like to post and challenge you for the ultimate smoothie. This is a great way to get high density food into you in a really tasty way. This is perfect for the person who's busy, on the run, hasn't got time for breakfast, or doesn't eat a huge amount of breakfast, isn't hungry at that time, but mid-morning is then looking to have something to eat. The smoothie is a great way to be able to sip your snacks and your high dense food through the morning and the afternoon, and on an easy, quick way. We can kind of pride ourselves that you can quite easily get a smoothie prepared, blitzed, and out the door before that slice of toast is popped out of the toaster. Fresh and immediate is the best, but you certainly can do a smoothie in the evening and then put it in the fridge and take it first thing in the morning. Then supporting the immune system, fermented foods has a huge role. Again, just got to watch out that you don't have too much fermented foods if you have a high histamine or you have a lot of allergies, because they will stimulate the immune system that strong. So whenever we talk about food, we also always get asked about supplements. I'm not a big supporter of just taking a supplement for the sake of supplements. I think a lot of people are literally weeing the supplements down the toilet. So we're trying to be supplements as specific as possible. Supplements have their place to supplement something that you know that you're not getting in your diet. However, if the focus is on your immune system, you might look to do specific supplements targeting the next kind of 3 or 4 months or through winter, because we know that we really want to target and support the immune system. So some of the key important vitamins and minerals that we can look at. As I said before, when you have a high stress situation, your body will use up vitamin C, vitamin B, your zinc and magnesium very quickly. So Epsom salt baths, you're supporting your zinc, your vitamin C, your B vitamins would be a very good idea in supporting your immune system. Vitamin D, vitamin A have a role. I'm not a big supporter of a multivitamin, but some people who feel that perhaps their diet isn't that great and they're working on it, and whilst they're working on it, a good quality whole food multivitamin is probably a good idea, but you're not going to supplement a poor diet. Your whole food multivitamin is really a baseline that you know that you're getting at least a basic level of supplements. Fish oils, we know, have a huge benefit in reducing inflammation, and that's your omega-3 component. And then you have your probiotics, which support your gut. Anytime someone's had a antibiotic use, particularly in the last 12 months, we would encourage them, if the immune system is challenged, to go on a probiotic. Garlic is great, but it's actually the allicin component in garlic, which you can get an allicin supplement. It's called allicin max. And then don't forget your trace elements. Your nut seeds give you all the zinc, selenium, all the basic elements. Under high stress times, some people also look to herbs, adaptogens, and then your antioxidants. But the golden rule here is, if you're looking to move towards wellness, focus on your diet, because if you focus on the diet, you can get much or most of this. You might kind of just bolster up the vitamin C or the vitamin B or the zinc or so, or the magnesium under higher stress situations. For those people who have worked with us and we've done talks before, we'll know that vitamin D is a big one. We're very keen on people to know their vitamin D status. The only way to do that is get a very simple finger prick test. Work out what your status is for vitamin D, and then retest. Retest after about 3 months and see that your supplementation is changing those values. From that, we can work out a vitamin D personalized dosing to get us up into optimum levels. Some people will just take a vitamin D supplement as a higher dose. Most of it is safe, but if you want to be really more prescriptive in it, we need to know your status in the beginning. The interesting thing with the status is that the NHS suggestions are that adequate would be around, as you see on the top of your screen, 50 millimoles per liter, nanomoles per liter. The challenge with that is that's just enough to get over deficiency, and they look at it from a rickets or bone perspective. We're looking here at a multi-system immune system perspective. That's too low. The ideal range is at 50 to 7 nanogram per milliliter. When you convert it, that needs to be up to 120, 175 nanomoles. So it's way higher. So we need a higher dose and for a longer period of time. And when you put into context, it's suggested that research shows the average UK levels of 47.5. We are one of the lowest, one of the lowest levels of vitamin D as a nation in Europe. So vitamin D through this winter is my big message to look at. When you look at the incidence, and this is from Grassroots Health in the States, which are one of the global leaders in research and monitoring vitamin D levels, you'll see at the top row the values. When you only get up to 100, 150, your optimum levels, that number 2, that's when you're starting to get the benefits of a lot of other more chronic healthcare conditions. This is where you are supporting the immune system. You're not supporting your immune system in a vitamin D when you're down at your 50 and above. That's enough just to prevent, as number 1 on the middle left, it's only enough to benefit the calcium absorption and the bone health of rickets. So if we're saying that we've got adequate, we really only got adequate enough to avoid rickets. We're not even taking on board the concept of that vitamin D has a huge impact on our immune system. And this is a vital topic, because when you look at the research coming out now with coronavirus, we've known it always for years with flu, but it's not publicized enough. And this is what should be hitting our media more. It's coming, there's bits and pieces, but it's getting drowned by the negative media press, because it creates more of a reaction of guidelines and restrictions and the pubs closing. These seem to be more topics that hit the media and create a reaction than actually what can I do for myself to help myself in actually prepare for winter. So vitamin D is a huge strategy with that. The media it up. I know that there was debate with MPs in Parliament the other day, suggesting even that vitamin D should become free supplement to the nation. But I know that through the NHS, those levels are going to be really low, nowhere near enough to actually stimulate the immune system, because their idea of the optimum or adequate level is way off the immune system benefit. We need to be supplementing far higher. We know that there's a cytokine storm associated with coronavirus, and it's been highlighted that vitamin D plays a big role in that system. So the vitamin D supplementation is one, but not the only, but I think it's a significant part of our strategy to prepare for winter. And again, research is coming out, and it's also highlighting the element of vitamin D deficiency with your BAM, your Black Asian ethnic minority group, because they need about 10 times more stimulation of sunlight than your white Caucasian to stimulate the same amount of vitamin D. So anyone of darker skin in the northern hemisphere, they need to be supplementing vitamin D, or at least knowing their vitamin D status, because they're just not going to produce enough. And it's highlighted this is probably one of the real big factors of why that group has had such a poor outcome with coronavirus. So if you're interested in this and interested in the research behind this, then I encourage you to look at this article. It's a brilliant article. It appears with Cytoplan on their blog, entitled The Role of Vitamin D in COVID-19, the latest research. It goes into all the details and the research and the numbers associated with coronavirus and the research behind vitamin D and why it's coming up more in certain demographics. So if there is one thing from a supplement perspective that I feel strongly about is looking at your vitamin D status. And I think a lot more people are becoming more and more aware of that. We've certainly sold a huge amount of vitamin D supplements this year compared to others. So this is what everyone likes, your quick summary, because I'm just aware of time and there are probably going to be some questions. So number one, I think you've got to look at your stress status, because that determines how you then, number one, look at your exercise. Number two, look at your mental health challenges, and particularly with relating to hormones and your sleep. I think we should be favoring a whole food approach to our diet, particularly emphasis on greens and fresh is best, but particularly also looking at how much we're relying on grains, cereals, your simple, easy carbohydrates, because they go to sugar very quickly, and that's what promotes the stress on the immune system and stress on your insulin. Insulin is a huge hormone, which is not only about sugar regulation, but it also has an anabolic. It has a building up perspective. So it's why traditionally some of your bodybuilders would illegally inject insulin, because it bulks us up. It puts stress on the body. Your supplements, as I said, vitamin B, C, zinc, those top four are probably the best, most ones under stress. And in this day and age, who's not under that chronic stress? Probiotics and the food choices and fish oils. Vitamin D is the big one for me. And I encourage people to start looking at the physical, emotional, and chemical elements of your life in relation to, is this moving me towards wellness, or is this moving me towards sickness? Is this moving me towards inflammation, or is it moving me away? We're on continual learning, and continually this is an evolving situation with coronavirus particularly, but through winter. And I encourage you to get proactive, get connected to your health and wellness, and get informed, because there's a lot of information, I think, that is not coming through enough. Where media is picking up storylines which are creating a lot of negative results and negative mental health stresses. It's creating that stress levels, but there's not enough actually saying you also have the power to help yourself and prepare yourself for winter. We're encouraged to prepare our cars for winter, but why are we not being encouraged to look at resources to help ourselves? So we've got to look at the idea of move well, think well, and eat well as far as our immune systems this winter. You might like to follow these. This is not the only ones to follow through the social media or wellness lifestyles. From Ranga Chatterjee is the house doctor. He's become very prolific with his books and his message, very much on the functional health perspective. Same with Mark Hyman, Robin Sharma, Tony Robbins along the lines of life strategies. Cindy Mira, Dale Pinnick, as I mentioned before, the medicinal chef. Cytoplan is the supplement company that we work with, but they're very proactive. They're run by a multidisciplinary panel, so it's a huge cross-section of medical professionals. It's run as a charity, and it's designed to support medical professionals in top quality food-based supplements, ideally for their practices. And they have a huge amount of work done as far as educational elements, not only for the professionals, but for the general public. So I encourage you certainly to read their blogs. They're research-based, they're fantastic. Food Matters, as well as A Hungry for Change. If you're looking for a food element and looking to change the way you see food and our food choices, I really encourage you to watch that movie and documentary. We're active. We're positioning ourselves certainly within our community to look to be one of the forefronts of a functional healthcare approach to health and well-being. We're active on social media, probably mostly on Facebook, and as we also run our with a good friend of mine, Ollie Matthews, a Unplugged Health Series podcast, and we link a lot of these podcasts also visually into Innate Talks, which is our YouTube channel. So I encourage you to get involved, get in contact, and continue the debate with us on these platforms. We're also available on our email, and if you'd like more ideas of what we do and how we work, or if we could support you or your business or your community or family, then we'd love to get involved. If you'd like to continue any of the information or want additional information that I've sped through today, then please give me a call. I'll happily close this down and go through any questions we may have via probably the chat button or the chat box, which would be great. I do apologize for whizzing through a lot of that at the end, but as you can see, there's a lot of information to get through. As I said, of which, if you'd like future talks and expand on one or two of those areas, I'd be more than happy to elaborate on anything. So if there's any questions, I'd welcome them to drop a question or so on the in the box line, or if you really feel that you would like to convey it, perhaps we can unmute you, or you can unmute yourself and then fire away. It's always usually needs one, and then we get going. Thanks, Jamie. So the question from Jamie is, why do cereals cause high inflammation? It's not so much, cereals is a broad topic, because there's different types of cereals. A lot of cereals these days, or what we'd say grains, are highly processed. So they are processed in a way that they are broken down. So the more something is processed, the quicker it will turn to sugar. So it's not to say that we shouldn't have cereals, but the quicker something gets turned to sugar, the more of its stress it has in the body. So take, for example, porridge oats. We know that porridge oats have a huge amount of benefit, high in vitamin B. The porridge oats is a whole grain. It's broken down slowly. It's a really good food. But if you take the whole grain oats and then you break them down, something like Ready Brick, which is then the powdered, that's already been chewed and broken down for you. Now that will get turned into sugar far quickly. So anything which goes into sugar the quickest, so you look at your glycemic index scale, anything which goes into sugar quickest, it's the sugar that is inflammatory. So we just know that cereals get turned to sugar quickly, and we know that a lot of people have a lot of cereals. So it's not saying that we shouldn't have cereals, but cereals and things. Vitamin D supplement, it doesn't matter. Vitamin D doesn't work by itself. So we want to also make sure that someone's diet is pretty good. If you want to be technical, vitamin D supplement works very closely with magnesium and also vitamin K2. So you can get a vitamin D supplement with vitamin D3. So D3 is the ideal. D2, your body does produce a bit of it, and that they bounce off each other. But the vitamin D3 is the one which has most of the effects on the immune system, but it works with vitamin K. So it doesn't really matter, as far as I'm concerned, the tablet or spray. I think the spray is the easiest. The spray just goes under the tongue. It's absorbed very quickly because vitamin D is actually a steroid. It's a fat-soluble steroid, so it's absorbed quicker under the tongue, and it doesn't have all the additional caking agents or constituents that make up a tablet. Most of our patients, we used to stock both, but 99% of people love the spray. It's quick, it's easy, it's got a peppermint taste, and spray on your tongue and you're gone. But some people still prefer the tablet. So I don't think it makes a huge difference, but we stock and recommend the spray because of its ease. And it's really, compared to other supplements, it's a cheap supplement. It's a no-brainer when you look at the fact that we're not making any vitamin D from now until spring, till April. So we personally use the spray. My kids love it. It's easy. So personal preference. So how do you help a teenager eat healthily when they don't eat fruit or veg? That's the tough one with having two teenagers, Julie. I think you've got to work with them, don't you? The challenge with them is trying to find what they like. To be honest, if kids only like peas, then you can start with peas. I think the smoothies work really well for a lot of teenagers because you can actually make them flavorsome and they can help and choose which flavors they like. You've got to kind of subtly go with the greens and hide them. We must also identify that teenagers are naturally making new nerve cells, they're making new brain cells, and they need a higher amount of actually sugar. So they will naturally crave what we would term more of the junky food. So it's trying to find the best junk food if you can and go with it. And it's about a balance. I think it's very hard at a teenage level to tell them that they can't eat, they're eating junk. They're going to actually physiologically crave that more than need. So it's trying to just get in and work with what they can and what they will eat, and what they go for. My teenage boys, they're generally fairly good, but given the choice, they would quite happily have a hot dog over a vegetarian meal. But maybe a bit of to and fro of working out what they work. We found also that by going back to whole foods and getting the kids involved in the choices, that we actually find that you can mix and match and you start finding what they like and work with them a bit for them. So the ideal is get them involved and help them choose. And I think it's a bit of playing off, things, but the teenagers is the tougher one. You can't get away with hiding things in their food that much compared to when they were little. Can I pose a question back to you all? Who thinks they get adequate sleep? Because I know I don't. That is probably one of the big ones. That is, I think, one of the big ones. When with cortisol, I think the big things from this is sleep, vitamin D, and then whole foods. I think if those are the three key elements, we're on the right path as far as trying to manage that immune system. And then watching our media, I think we've got to really watch what we've been exposed to in our mental health with the media, because the media is really, do you notice over the last 2 or 3 weeks, the stress levels of everyone has been cranked up because there's this uncertainty, there's this and that. And so we've got to go back to what can we control? What exercise can we control? What's our mental state? How are we sleeping? And how we eating? And particularly influencing our immune system. Any other questions? Is anyone already doing vitamin D? Good. I think that's the big one, and it keeps popping up in the media, and then it gets tagged down the priority list because there's another guideline or restriction, and and etc. But I think that's the big one. And I've noticed a huge amount in our patient base, and that there's a lot more people who are becoming more aware of the vitamin D. The vitamin D that we stock is this one. Let's go through. The Better For You. It's a spray. This is 3,000 units. This is probably really an ideal maintenance dose for most adults. If they are lower, we'd even do 2 sprays of that in a day. And I think this one lasts about 3 months. And we sell it at around £8. So like for a maintenance dose, you've got £8, you've got a 3-month supply. So when you look at the cost effectiveness of a vitamin D, and when you look at the state of how that can benefit you, it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. There are 1 or 2 conditions, liver conditions, because vitamin D is actually produced in the skin, converted in the liver, and then also in the kidneys. So there's a couple of conditions. If you have a liver condition or kidney condition, or you're on only 1 or 2 specific diuretics, but you would always just double check that with if you're on any prescription medication. But that's a very small percentage that you would consider that, as well as also if you're if you're retaining any liver condition, cirrhosis condition, fatty liver disease, hemochromatosis, these kind of things you would look at. But that's very, very rare, but those people are usually already aware of that. But pretty much, vast majority of the population, you can quite easily take 6,000 international units a day, which to get over that rickets, put in perspective, the NHS would suggest around 400 units. So if you're taking a multivitamin which has got some vitamin D in, the amount which is in there is going to be way too low. So it's not a case of, well, I take a multivitamin, I see it's got vitamin D in, I'm okay. They will always do with a multivitamin, they'll always do the levels really low, because they've got to make it safe for the general population to go to the shelf and just buy it off the shelf. So if there's any questions about what level or how much vitamin D you're taking, then please let me know or drop us an email and I can elaborate on that. But also go back. Lewis, did you press record for this? Good, I forgot. So you can always go back. So I'm going to, with all your consent, I'm going to take this and I'll put it onto our Innate Talks YouTube channel. So you can go back to some of the slides. And that Cytoplan blog is a great resource because it goes into more depth, the details of the supplementation, but I can also send you some specific links which detail why those supplement levels and what the safety elements of that, because you'll get a lot of conflicting reports from traditional supplements or levels of vitamin D, because they will always be looking at that rickets level and not the functional health and immune system level. So it's we can make way more. Your body, when it goes into the sun in a day, will make 20,000 international units. So we're not supplementing at a high level when we're doing 3, 4, 5, 6,000. But the best thing is to get actually the most expensive thing on the vitamin D is actually getting the test. The supplement is the cheapest. But if you do the test, then you can actually work out your strategy for your weight, of how we can change it over 3 months. So this now is really the important time to look at these strategies for your immune system, because I think the biggest hit for especially coronavirus and flus, and that is always going to be traditionally that January, February, March time. And that's why I think the numbers were so dramatically changed within coronavirus last winter, because it actually hit at the perfect time, is coming out of that the worst time. That's where most of the death rates naturally in the UK is in that January, February time. Right, I'm pretty much out of time, I think, Lewis. If there's no other questions, I'd just like to thank and acknowledge you all for taking some time out with me today. I know I've got some patients who are asking if we're going to record the session, so if there are others, please let them get hold of either Lewis or myself, and we can pass on the details where we can upload the copy of this webinar. If there's any more topics or some of these topics that you think you desperately like to expand on, as I said, I'd be more than happy. And as I said, thank you for your time, and particularly also to Clapham Collinge for, again, investing time in their staff and their clients, in us as well, and in our community. So I thank you for the opportunity to everyone, and particularly also Lewis and Clapham Collinge for setting this up.
Thank you, Roger.